Hello students. In the last class we studied about some of the properties of colloids. You remember we discussed about the color of the colloids, we discussed colligative properties, we studied Tyndall effect and Brownian moment. After completing that 4 properties of colloids, today let me continue some more properties. Okay, so 3 more properties we have to study in the colloids, especially for the salts. Let me continue the 5th one. There is a charge on the colloidal particles. Okay, so you have to remember students, when you consider a true solution, let me take sodium chloride added to water, it will have a dissolved ions, means Na plus Cl minus, both the ions are present. So in case of some of the solutions there will be charges present, but both the charges. Now instead of sodium chloride, suppose if you add a sugar to water, it will also have the smaller particles, but there is no charged particles, so there is no charge in case of sugar solution. Now compared to a true solution, in case of a colloid there is always a single charge. Remember, it is not both the charges, any one of the charges will be present. Now the question you will ask, why the charge present on the colloidal particles, or how the charge comes to a colloidal particle? You may prepare it by Bredig-Sark method or by chemical methods or by peptidization. Now the charge on the colloidal particle, it is either positive charge or a negative charge. That is explained based on preferential adsorption. Okay, now the word itself says among the 2 ions, one of the ion accumulates first, that is called preferential adsorption. I will explain one of the example, then you will become clear what is preferential adsorption. Suppose if I take a silver nitrate solution AgNO3, to this I will add potassium iodide. Okay, I will take a silver nitrate solution, to that I will add a potassium iodide solution. Now the potassium iodide splits into K plus and I minus. Now the iodide ion, that is I minus, accumulates around these particles, hence it becomes a negatively charged colloid. Okay, so which ion accumulates around the particles, that will decide. So when I take silver nitrate, add potassium iodide to that, then iodide ions of Ki deposits around the silver nitrate particles, so that it becomes a negatively charged. Okay, same silver nitrate solution can be converted into positively charged colloid also. How? Suppose if I take a potassium iodide, to that I will add a silver nitrate solution. See the difference, students. Generally you think like Ne2 added, it will become a reaction. Now you have to understand, if I take a potassium iodide, to that I will add silver nitrate solution. Now what happens? The Ag plus ions of silver nitrate what we added, it will accumulate around and it becomes a positively charged colloid. Okay, so the colloid what we prepare, it can be either positively charged or negatively charged based on which of the ion gets accumulated. Okay, I will give one more example. This is the first example of silver nitrate forming positive or negatively charged colloid. The second example, suppose if I take ferric chloride and add it to hot water. Okay, now Fe3 plus ions, if it accumulates, then it becomes a positively charged colloid. And same way, instead of that, if we add it to a sodium hydroxide solution, OH minus ion accumulates and it becomes a negatively charged. Okay, the colloid prepared by the different methods will have a different charges based on which ion accumulates on the colloidal particles. I think you understood before in the previous classes, cleansing action of soap, how the micelle formation takes place there, how the hydrophilic and hydrophobic ends of the soap molecule accumulates around the grease and gives a charge to that. Okay, so here also you understood the preferential adsorption is one of the phenomenon which explains about the charge on the colloidal particles. Okay, now one important definition you have to understand in this chapter related to the preferential adsorption and the charge on the colloidal particle, that is about a zeta potential. It is also called electrokinetic potential. Okay, now what do you mean by zeta potential or electrokinetic potential? Now consider, if there is a colloidal particle present, now suppose if one charge accumulates, maybe I say it is a negative charge accumulated around this, the colloidal particle, and because of the negative charge, now the next positive charge will accumulate around that. So there is a formation of double layer around that particle. Are you understanding? There is a negatively charged particles accumulated and then around that positively charged particles accumulate. So there is a formation of double layer. And among these two, the first layer is fixed and the second layer can be diffused. Okay, that is moving continuously. The first layer is fixed. So now the potential difference between these two layers is called zeta potential or electrokinetic potential. You study this in the electrochemistry also. Okay, but remember what is zeta potential or electrokinetic potential? It is a potential difference between fixed layer. I told you the first layer which is accumulated, it is a fixed layer, and the diffused layer, the second layer which is adsorbed, that is a diffused layer. Okay, and no doubt they must have a opposite charges. Okay, that is called zeta potential or electrokinetic potential. Are you clear, students? The potential difference between the fixed layer and the diffused layer of opposite charges is called zeta potential or electrokinetic potential. When it is asked for 1 mark, you have to write that much definition. Okay? Yes, that was a fifth property of the colloids. There is a charge on the colloidal particles. Are you clear? Yes. Now let me move on to the next property, that is electrophoresis. Okay, now electrophoresis and electroosmosis, these are two different terms. Try to understand what is electrophoresis. Now suppose consider I'll take a U-shaped tube in which I will fill a colloid. Understand? If I fill a colloid in a U-shaped tube which is connected with the two electrodes, anode and cathode, generally we use a platinum electrode. Suppose if it is a positive and this is a negative one. If I fill the colloidal solution or a colloidal system within this, now in the presence of electric field, there is a migration of the particles. Suppose if the positively charged particles are present, they move towards a negative electrode. Or if the negatively charged particles are present, they move towards a positive electrode. So this movement of the colloidal particles towards the oppositively charged electrode in the presence of electric field. Okay, remember the simple definition for electrophoresis, the process of movement of colloidal particles. You can use the word movement or migration of colloidal particles towards the oppositively charged electrode in the presence of electric field is called electrophoresis. Okay, suppose if you use a particular membrane, then only the dispersion medium will move, that is called electroosmosis. Okay, here in electrophoresis the dispersed phase particles are moving, and in electroosmosis the dispersion medium particles are moving. Okay, so there is a difference between electrophoresis and electroosmosis. Are you clear? So definition of electrophoresis is easy, the process of movement of colloidal particles towards the positively charged electrode in the presence of electric field. Okay, so it may come for 1 mark again. What is electrophoresis? You understood? It is one of the method used to detect the charge on the colloidal particles also. Okay, so that completes the sixth one, electrophoresis. Now let me move on to the next property, that is a precipitation. It is also called coagulation or a flocculation. So what do you mean by precipitation? Simple, I can give you a simplest example. If I take milk, I'll add sodium chloride or common salt to that. What happens, students? Milk will be spoiled. Milk appears like a curd. It will not convert into curd. It appears like a curd. There is a precipitation. Milk is an example for emulsion. It had some particles there with a particular charge, but when I added sodium chloride to that, what happened? That added electrolyte, that is simply if I say sodium chloride or any other salt, it produces two ions, positive and negative ions, and one of the ions of it will cause the precipitation. Okay, it will cause the neutralization of the charge. In a simple way, what is chemically happening there? A single charge present on the colloidal particles. Okay, now when I added electrolyte contains both cation and anion, and one of the ion will neutralize the charge. Because of the neutralization of the charge, the colloidal particles will settle down. It means it converts into a suspension or a precipitate, and that phenomenon is called precipitation. Okay, so what is precipitation? The process of settling of colloidal particles is called precipitation. Okay, I gave you one simple example of a spoiling of milk by adding sodium chloride. It is not only that method, there are many methods used to cause the precipitation. Okay, so I hope you understood. The process of settling of colloidal particles is called precipitation. Okay, now which all the different methods used for a precipitation or coagulation, try to understand. The first one by electrophoresis. Just now I told you electrophoresis. The particles will migrate towards oppositively charged electrode. when the particles accumulates on the surface of an electrode, they aggregate and they become a larger particle, and no doubt that is converted into precipitate there. So by electrophoresis we can convert a colloid or a sol into precipitate. Second one, by mixing two oppositively charged salts. If you have a positively charged colloid and a negatively charged colloid, you mix them, there also neutralization of a charge happens, and precipitation happens due to neutralization. I told you it can be done by mixing two oppositively charged salts or colloids. Okay, the third one is a boiling. If you take a colloid and boil it continuously, I can give you a very simple example. Any fruit juice is an example for a colloid. And suppose if you boil a fruit juice, what happens? It will be spoiled. There is also a friction between the particles, or you can say there is a more collision between the molecules that will convert the colloid into precipitate. So boiling is also one of the method. Okay, but don't generalize it. Okay, because some of you may ask a doubt now. Milk is also an example for a colloid. On boiling milk it will not be spoiled. Pasteurization we heard. It is not for all the colloids, but some of the colloids can be converted into precipitate by boiling. Okay. The next method, dialysis, I told you, one of the method of purification of colloids. If you do repeated dialysis, again, what happens is the dispersion medium particles will aggregate. Okay, actually, we know that very small sized particles will separate from colloidal particle by dialysis, and if you do repeated dialysis, what happens? That very small particles of the dispersion medium, they also will aggregate, and due to that aggregation of them, it will convert into precipitate. So, persistent or repeated dialysis also one of the cause for converting a colloid into precipitate. The last one, and this is very convenient and easy one to convert a colloid into precipitate, that is by addition of the electrolytes. Okay, you add any electrolyte, we know electrolytes will have a positive and negative ions, and one of the ions, okay, without knowing what is the charge on the colloidal particles, we can prefer this method. Why? Because added electrolyte contains both positive and negative ions. So one of the ion acts as an active ion, or we can also call it as a flocculating ion. Remember, suppose if there is a negatively charged colloid, I will add sodium chloride to that. Students, you are understanding what I am telling? I will take a negatively charged colloid, to that I will add a common salt NaCl. When I added sodium chloride, what happens? It forms Na plus and Cl minus, you know. And among those two, among Na plus and Cl minus, which is the active ion or which is the flocculating ion? Simple, the ion which has the opposite charge of the colloid is a flocculating ion. Suppose if I take negatively charged colloid, Na plus acts as a flocculating ion. If I take positively charged colloid, Cl minus acts as a flocculating ion. So ion which is responsible for the neutralization is called a flocculating ion. Okay, so that will cause the precipitation or neutralization, or which will result in the settling of colloidal particles. Okay, so addition of electrolyte is one of the easiest and convenient method of converting a colloid into precipitate, or precipitation can be easily done. Okay, so remember the four or five methods of converting a colloid into precipitate: by electrophoresis, by mixing the two oppositively charged colloids, by boiling, by persistent dialysis, and by the addition of electrolytes. Okay, clear? Are you understanding? Simple. Now let me move on to the next concept, that is Hardy-Sculls rule. Okay, what is Hardy-Sculls rule? The statement can be asked for 1 mark. Okay, or based on the applications of this can be question asked in the competitive exam. Okay, so statement you try to understand. Greater the valence of the flocculating ion, students, you are remembering I told you what is flocculating ion just now. Okay, so flocculating ion is the ion which has an opposite charge to that of the colloid. Okay, so the greater the valence or valency of flocculating ion, greater is its cause of or power to cause the precipitation. Okay, now let me give you a very simple example. I take a negatively charged colloid. Okay, I take a negatively charged colloid, the charge on the colloidal particle is negative. I can add any electrolyte to this. Okay, suppose I will add aluminum salt like aluminum chloride, or I'll add barium chloride, or I'll add sodium chloride, assume. By adding any of these electrolytes I can cause a precipitation. Okay, but important thing is added electrolyte will have both the ions, but one of the ion is responsible for precipitation. When the charge on the colloidal particle is negative, aluminum ion Al3+ will be the active ion or flocculating ion. Here barium ion Ba plus 2 or barium 2 plus is active ion. Sodium ion Na plus is active ion. Okay, among aluminum chloride, barium chloride and sodium chloride added to a negatively charged colloid, which causes precipitation faster? If the question comes like that, arrange them in the increasing order of the precipitation action or a decreasing order, then you must know the larger the valency, aluminum valency 3. So barium 2 and sodium 1. So when the valency of the flocculating ion is greater, its power to cause the precipitation is also greater. Okay, so suppose if you take a positively charged colloid, then you are using a different colloids means then also you have to know what is the charge on the negative ion. Okay, so can be asked for 1 mark, or the applications asked in the competitive exams. Hardy-Sculls rule: greater the valence of flocculating ion. Students, you must know what is flocculating ion. Then greater is its power to cause precipitation. Okay, once you know the statement, you can easily apply for any of the colloids. Okay, but you must know, when you study the same concept for the competitive exam, you must know the different examples for a positively charged colloid and negatively charged colloid. If you refer different books, you'll get it. Okay, so once you know what is the charge on the colloidal particles, then it is very convenient to identify which is the flocculating ion there. Are you clear? So that is simple about the precipitation. Okay, with that we completed properties of colloids. Are you clear? Properties of colloids we completed. So before we move on to colloids around us, let me tell you one small and important aspect here. Just now we completed about the precipitation. Okay, so can we prevent the precipitation? Yes, we can prevent the precipitation by stabilizing the colloid. Okay, how stabilization can be done? We can use some reagents, that is called as a stabilizing agent. Okay, at the same time, I told you before in the same chapter, lyophilic and lyophobic colloids. Okay, so when it comes to the protective action of colloids, just remember one small important thing here. When you add lyophilic colloid to the lyophobic colloid, it can increase the stability. Okay, you'll ask a question how, because today I didn't say anything about lyophilic and lyophobic, but we heard before. Lyophilic and lyophobic are the two types of colloids based on the nature of interaction between dispersed phase and dispersion medium, and among these two, lyophilic colloids are more stable. Okay, if you add lyophilic colloids to the lyophobic colloid, are you understanding, students? Lyophilic colloids, if it is mixed to the lyophobic colloid, then it increases the stability. Okay, so that is how the protective action of colloid comes. Many more details are there related to the stability. Okay, but for you it is only sufficient which colloid can increase the stability of which colloid. Lyophilic colloids can increase the stability of lyophobic colloids. Okay, now moving on to the next concept here. Which all the colloids we are using in a day-to-day life, or which all the colloids around us present? Okay, so some of the examples we can understand. Few I told you before when I discussed about examples. The first one is a blue color of the sky. The Tyndall effect you can explain. Okay, the blue color of the sky is also due to the dust particles, the scattered particles in the medium. Okay, that will be one of the simplest natural example for a colloid. Second one, fog, mist, which you can see generally, that is also made up of colloidal particles. We know they are different type of colloids we discussed based on physical states of dispersed phase and dispersion medium. Rain, the formation of a cloud, aggregation of cloud, and then the collision between the clouds also. They're all colloidal phenomena only. Okay, even when you study about the artificial rain where we spray some silver nitrate or silver iodide crystals, that is also a colloidal phenomena. Okay, so I'm not going to the details, but remember the fog, mist and rain which is naturally happening, that is also colloidal in nature. The different food articles, if I say ice cream, you will all remember, yes, ice cream is also type of colloid. Not only ice cream, the milk, but many such examples you can give. They're all, even I told you just now before in the precipitation, the fruit juices also examples for colloids only. Okay, so that is easy, you will never forget that. Blood is also an example for a colloid, remember. Okay, it may have the hemoglobin and other components, but we are not going to that details. Blood is also an example for a colloid. Okay, soil, we know the different compositions in the soil makes the different yield can be obtained, okay, or different crops can be grown in a different different soils, okay. So that is also based on the composition of a soil, and soils are also colloidal in nature, okay. Now the one more natural phenomena what we can study is a formation of delta region, okay. I think you have seen this, the junction where the river water mixes with the sea water we call as a delta region. Okay, now what happens in the river water? There are mud particles in the colloidal size. The sea water contains a dissolved salts or electrolytes. Okay, so just now I told you when you add an electrolyte to a colloid there is a precipitation. Okay, so formation of delta, that means at the junction where the river water mixes with the sea water, river water containing the mud particles with the colloidal size, sea water containing the dissolved salts which acts as an electrolyte. So when an electrolyte comes in contact with the colloid, there is a formation of a slimy mud layer, okay, mud like a paste, and that is a delta region. So formation of delta is also an example for colloid around us naturally happening, okay. So that's all about the colloids around us. Blue color of the sky, fog, mist and rain, the food articles, blood, soils, and formation of delta. Okay, it can be 1 or 2 mark questions asked here, not more than that. Okay, now to conclude the chapter, at the end you have to understand about applications of colloids. Okay, so where and all we use the colloids, depending on the different phenomena and their efficiency, where we use them in the day-to-day life. Okay, so that if you list out, there are simple 8 applications of colloids given in the book, so you can remember that. The first one, electrical precipitation of smoke. You all studied environmental chemistry in the first year, and you know the air pollution is due to different carcinogenic substances or the different waste gases given out from the industries, okay, and how those are purified, okay. The toxic or poisonous gases purified by electrostatic precipitation. Smoke is an example for a colloid. When the colloid, like a smoke, is passed between the electrodes, since it has got one of the charges, the charged particles accumulates on the colloidal, like colloidal particles which are charged, which accumulates on the electrode. When it accumulates, it will be easily separated, okay. So electrical precipitation of smoke, one of the industrial application of the colloid. Second one, purification of drinking water. This also most of you have an experience. During the rainy season, if the drinking water source, maybe a pond or well water, gets a color due to the mud particle, okay, how we can purify? It's simple. We put some alum, potash alum, or different double salts we add. Whenever you put a alum, what happens? That mud particles which are distributed in water, they will be aggregating or they will precipitate and it will settle down. Okay, so purification of drinking water. Chlorination is a different technique, but the drinking water can be purified by adding alum. Okay, that is also an example for a colloids. Okay, coming to the third one, medicines. We know so many chemicals we use as a chemotherapeutic drugs. They also colloids in nature. Okay, they can be easily adsorbed on the surface within the body. Okay, and they are more efficient. Or you can understand about some antacids like milk of magnesia, you may be heard. Okay, it is also colloid in nature, which will easily getting adsorbed on the surface of the cells. Okay, so medicines is a one more important applications of colloids. And when you consider about the tanning of leather, okay, there also the phenomena of adsorption and colloids taking place. So tanning of leather is a one more important application of a colloid. Okay, and this is a one more which I explained before, cleansing action of soaps and detergents. Okay, when you apply the soap along with the water on a dirty area, okay, how it will try to separate the impurities like a grease or any other organic matter. It is again hydrophilic, hydrophobic, and one will be accumulating there and then separating. That simple phenomenon of cleansing action of soap or detergent is also an application for a colloid. Okay, and one more easy application here, the photographic plates and films. Okay, again today we are thinking about the digital photography, but earlier we used to say about the photographic films development. There is also formation of a colloids and the phenomena of adsorption. Okay, now one more application is in the rubber industry. You know, rubber latex, that is also a colloid, and the purification of that and converting, before we go to the phenomena of vulcanization of rubber, the rubber latex what is used, that is also containing the colloidal particles only. In rubber industry we use that. Okay, and the last but the not a simple one, the industrial products, when you say about the different types of emulsions, you say about a paint or ink, all these are industrial products. They are also colloids in nature. Okay, so these are some of the simple applications of colloids. Just to remind you again: electrical precipitation of smoke, purification of drinking water, different medicines, tanning of leather, cleansing action of soaps and detergents, photographic plates and films, rubber industry, and industrial products. Okay, so with that, applications of colloids completes. Okay, and in this chapter only small thing left which is excluded from the syllabus for this year, that is about emulsions. Okay, what is emulsion and types of emulsions, that I am not explaining because it is removed from the syllabus for this academic year. Okay, so apart from that, we completed simple chapter surface chemistry. Okay, I hope you are clear. We started with what is surface chemistry, adsorption, absorption. Then we studied about the different types of adsorptions, physical and chemical adsorption. We studied about catalysis. Then we studied about enzyme catalysis, mechanism of catalysis. We started with the colloids. In colloids we started what are colloids, how they are classified, the different bases, preparation of colloids, properties of colloids, and colloids around us, and applications of colloids. Okay, so that's all about surface chemistry. Thank you.